Capron,
Here.
Greckin,
Here.
Moore,
Here.
Scott,
Here.
Ward.
Here. I make a motion, we go into closed session, the city council discuss strategy with council about matters where litigation is imminent because public disclosure would be likely to prejudice or disadvantage. Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Scott,
Aye.
Waters.
Aye.
Capron.
Aye.
I make a motion, we go into closed session, the city council discusses purchase or sale of particular real estate where premature disclosure would be likely. We reasonably expected to increase the price the city would have to pay for that property or reduce the price the city would receive for that property.
Second.
Moore,
Aye.
Scott,
Aye.
Waters,
Aye.
Capron.
Aye.
Greckin.
Aye. I make a motion, we go into closed session, the city council discuss strategy with council about matters that are presently in litigation because public disclosure would be likely to prejudice or disadvantage the position of the city in that litigation.
Second.
Scott,
Aye.
Waters,
Aye.
Capron,
Aye.
Greckin,
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Okay, that was my friend Mike Fitzpatrick. You need industrial ground?
Capron,
Here.
Gretchen,
Here.
Moore,
Aye.
Scott,
Aye.
Water.
I move we adjourn the closed session.
Second.
Gretchen,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Scott,
Aye.
Waters.
Aye.
Capron.
Aye.
We'll be back here in just a few minutes. Good job today. I don't care what I've been saying about it.
Okay.
Who's gonna be looking at all that?
Me. You? Me? Yeah, I'm here.
Gretchen,
Here.
Moore,
Here.
Scott,
Here.
Water.
Here. Can we stand for a moment of silent prayer followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I have a proclamation. Bernadette Brixner.
Okay.
We have a proclamation that reads, whereas the United States was founded upon the principle that all people are created with unalienable right up to freedom, and the 13th Amendment was added to the Constitution, making slavery illegal. And whereas slavery within the United States today is the most often found in the form of forced labor and sex trafficking, which weakens the social fabric, increases violence and organized crime, and debases our humanity. Whereas every business, community organization, faith community, family, and individual can make a difference by choosing products that are not made by forced labor. By working to protect our young people from sexual exploitation, by addressing the problems of internet sex trafficking and pornography, and by becoming more aware of the problem and possible solutions. Now, therefore, I, Robert E. Scott, Mayor of the City of Sioux City, Iowa, on behalf of City Council, do hereby acknowledge January as Slavery and Human Traffic Awareness and Prevention Month, and encourage our citizens to become more familiar with the problem and work towards solutions.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for the work you do, and say a
Thank
few
you.
words if you would.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I would like to, first of all, thank you for supporting this proclamation. Over the past year, we've seen a real increase in the interest and the awareness of the fact that human trafficking isn't just an international issue, not just a national issue, but it's local. And it's things like this proclamation that help get people, tuned into that. And I hope that over the next year, we'll continue our efforts at education, but I think we need to be doing a little bit more to actually start addressing the problem. And to do that, we're going to need continued help and support from the police and from the City Council. So we appreciate your support, and we look forward to it in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't want to say the address, but how's your house going that you were?
Okay,
That
that
one?
is not our house. That
Right.
is the Siouxland Restoration Center's house, and there's still remodeling that has to be done on it,
Okay,
but it's coming along.
good,
They still
good,
hope to open in spring,
good.
but they haven't really started in the basement yet.
Okay, well, it's much needed, and thank you.
Thank
Keep
you.
up the good work.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to interviews. Art Center Board of Trustees, Robert Gillespie. Robert, come to the, there you go. Say a few words of why you would like to serve and.
Well, this has kind of come full circle. I served 2 full terms on the Art Center Board well over 10 years ago. At the time, we acquired the bus transfer property, developed a plan for it, and as you well know, they're building on it right now. So that was one of the reasons why I wanted to come back on the board, to see that completed.
And I know you do a good job, Bob, so thanks for making the application again.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
So you served back 10 years, 17 years ago? Oh, you served for like 17 years, okay,
Yep.
good. Well, everybody should make a comeback once in a while, I understand that. Any other questions?
Oh, thank you.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
appreciate you for applying, for
Thank you.
your application. Building and Housing Code Board, Doug Rose.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you want to serve, Doug.
Well, I'm Doug Rose. I've worked at Bacon Creek Design and Schroeder Engineering for the past 45 years. Really just give back to the community that's given us so much.
You've served two terms.
Correct. Then Daryl told me that we had to re-interview for the third.
There'd have to be an exception, right?
Right. Just a waiver of, just a
Or a
waiver of the
waiver, yeah.
rules, but that's true with the other applicants, correct?
Yes. All 3.
Thanks for your service, we'll let you know. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Doug?
Environmental Advisory Board, Adam Wheelock. Not tag teaming with your wife, you're doing it on your own?
Not this year, I'm doing it on my own, that's
All right.
correct.
Go ahead, tell us why you want to continue.
Currently serving on the board, there's still a lot of work to do, a lot of issues that we still want to address, and I'd just like to keep going on what we're continually working on.
Talk to me about some of that vision or what you hope in the future or working on currently, maybe that you're passionate about.
Sure, recycling program that the city has. We've continued to work on modifying it, changing it, keeping it up to date and making sure that the program is working as well as possible for the city. making sure that we're making sustainable decisions, so all the stuff we are collecting goes to the right places. That's something that I think we're just going to have to constantly keep evolving on as markets change and things like that. We're constantly going to have to stay up to speed with who we're working with and what they're doing with all that kind of stuff. Another big one is stormwater, and I know the department here in the city actually has a lot to do with it. And so we offer a lot of input. We bring different groups from the city together and make sure that all that's being addressed correctly too. So those are probably two of the big ones.
Very good.
So where do you take the computers that are bad? Do you have to wait for your semi-annual deal?
In town, there's a couple of places that will take them. Most of them are retailers that can take an actual computer or a computer monitor. Most places at this point are charging a fee. To my knowledge, I don't think there's anybody left out there that's just taking.
Well, I don't care about the fee. I just wondering if, I'll get with Melissa then. Thanks.
Most of the major retailers that are doing the sales do have a reclamation program as well.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Thanks. Human Rights Commission, Amy DeGroat-Hammer?
Hello, my
You're
name
not
is.
on yet, right now, right, Amy? This is new for you?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, I just put an application in probably a few months ago.
And we have how many openings? And female or male?
It is supposed to be male, however, it's been more than 3 months, and so we've made that good step, that we can't accept a female at this time.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. I am a school counselor in Sioux City. I've been a public educator here in Sioux City, born and raised here. And I've been a longtime advocate for people that are serving in underserved populations and also who have faced different difficulties. One of my skill sets is that I am an educator, and I do like to work on educating people. Sometimes it's through one-on-one conversations, sometimes it's through public forums. And I've actually recently just left public education and took a job to work at the Iowa State Education Association to work for teachers and education professionals to be able to advocate for them. I've had experience working here in the state of Iowa, lobbying for public education issues and student issues, human rights issues, and also at the federal government level. So one of my biggest things I had to report students who had experienced abuse, and there were lots of loopholes in the law. And so I worked with David Dawson a few years ago and Chris Hall to write some legislation for the state of Iowa that did pass to close that loophole in order to make sure that our students are protected. So that's something that I'd like to be able to do here in Sioux City, to work on rights for our Siouxland community.
Very good.
Thanks for your advocacy.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Yeah.
it very much.
Thank you, Alex.
You know, older guys like myself, though, can't hardly read the small printing that you have, so next time.
Is it on my resume? Is that what it is? Yeah. I don't know for sure what you have in front of you, so yeah. I don't know if you have any questions for me.
Did you take Bruce?
I did not, but I took the person who took Bruce's jobs. Yeah. So I'm
Okay.
going to be more in the rural communities. Mhm.
Okay, all right.
Thank you for making an application.
Thank you. Thank you for considering me.
Definitely.
Naya Key? Am I saying that? Hi, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm Nia Key, and I am currently serving as the Northwest Branch Chair of the NASW, the National Association for Social Workers. I have been a social worker for a number of years. I practiced in Michigan, the state of Michigan. I practiced in the state of Pennsylvania, and I'm now practicing here in the state of Iowa. I work as the jail alternative coordinator, and I provide services within Woodbury, Plymouth, and Sioux counties. I work with individuals who work to identify individuals who have a severe mental illness or substance abuse illness and collaborate with the courts, the prosecuting attorneys, and also public defenders in order to make sure that we find alternative solutions for those individuals to either be released from jail sooner or be coordinated and collaborated and placed into treatment, the appropriate treatment programs. I am also a member of Tau Alpha Upsilon Honor Society, which is an honor society for human services professionals. I have been, as I said, a social worker for a number of years. I consider myself also as an educator. I am new to Sioux City, so, well, not so new, but a little new. And
A year and a half, is that right?
Yes, yes. And so since I already serve for the Northwest branch of Iowa for the NASW. I felt that since I'm here local in Sioux City, that I would lend my services, if you'll have me, here in Sioux City and serve on the board of the Human Rights Commission.
Very nice.
So any questions for me?
Thank you. We appreciate you applying.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate your
Thank you.
including your resume too. It's very impressive.
Thank you.
Parking and Skywalk System Board of Trustees, Mark Reinders.
Good afternoon. Thanks for the opportunity to continue on the Skywalk board. I'm like a few of the others. This would be my third term on the board. I represent one of the property owners. In this case, would be Mid-American Energy on the Skywalk board.
And I know your boss encourages public participation, so she'll be very proud of you.
Plus, you know, I just love to do it anyway.
And we love that you love it.
Working with the city staff, think we've made some pretty good progress in the last couple of years. If you've noticed the blue and white illuminated signs now on some of the ramps, and we're going to continue that. The LED lighting. We'd like to spruce up the interior of a lot of the corridors, linking the buildings, and that's in a work in progress, and some things like that that have really helped and hope get more people involved in the Skywalk.
I think that'll be really important, especially in the coming years as well, with the different projects going on downtown.
Right, and you get the school district, for example,
exactly.
expanding down there. Ho-Chunk has done a tremendous job of, getting some people on the Skyway, and Mid-American staff uses the court. As soon as we get it hooked up to City Hall, we'll get more people on.
There you go.
Thank you for replying.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for your consideration.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay, we'll go to the consent agenda, which is items 3 through 12H. You can consider these items to pass unanimously unless the council member asks for a separate vote. You want to
Mayor,
speak?
can I ask a question real quick?
Yeah.
Do we have to formally waive policy if Mark served 2 terms?
Only if you vote for them, they'll ask you that when they do.
Oh, okay.
When they poll
Okay.
you.
All right, thanks.
You have one more left too, Scott Berlin.
No, it says it's rescheduled till January 22nd online, sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry.
You want to speak on any item that, as I read them, come forward, whether it be consent or regular agenda. If you want to speak on an item not on the agenda, please come up under citizen concerns. When you come to the microphone, please state your name and address so it can be used for the record. I'll move the consent agenda. Reading of the minutes of the City Council, January 2nd, 2018. 4 is acknowledging the Board of Adjustment actions of December 12th, 2017. I believe there are people here to speak on that, I'm assuming. Yep, come state your name and address.
My name's Steve Cole. My current address is 520 Orpheum Electric Building, Suite 383, although some of you may realize I may have an office, I'm not so sure I can get to it right now. It's a little waterlogged. I'm representing Lauren Mason, who operates Painfully Clear Window Service, and then Bob Clemerson, who operates United Center, Inc. We're asking the council as a whole to send the conditional use permit for Brad Cummings and his company or companies back to planning and zoning for them to review. And here's why. The city right now is currently spending, over $300,000 to overhaul its zoning, basically to try to avoid spot zoning. This is not only spot zoning, I think it's potential for creeping spot zoning. In addition to the one property, I understand Brad and or in the same park. I think it's also important too, I don't know what the availability is of business park land as opposed to general industrial land, but I think it's important to preserve that and have it used for business park purposes only. Another problem with conditional use is the fact that I understand it's going to be used for wrecked vehicles. As Mr. Clemerson has pointed out, I understand the city is trying to require, cul-de-sacs now. There is no cul-de-sac at this end where this property is, and that when vehicles come to go there, they will most likely use Bob's property to turn around in. There is already a planning and zoning hearing scheduled tomorrow at 4 to consider an actual zoning change of the properties from business park to general use. You know, I wonder if this should even post, you know, another reason for review, just send it back to planning and zoning. We're concerned that Mr. Cummings is not being required to adhere to city design standards, whereas properties already there have been required to do so. That's a problem. I think there were some problems initially with the planning and zoning hearing on the conditional use. We have some concerns about every property owner in the area getting notice in a timely fashion. It's always very important in terms of due process. I at least ask that the council or city staff look at that. Of course, business parks themselves do not allow for salvage yards, so this is, and also too, when you do go for changes such as this change, you look under the city code, is it similar to use what is already being operated under business park use? It is not. It's a general industrial use, and that's another reason why it shouldn't be allowed. Let's see what else. Also ask the council and or city staff to look at City Code 25.02.140, subsection 3, notes decision criteria when administrative or staff make decisions on whether a proposed use is conditional. One of them, of course, is impervious surface. You might also have a noise problem, solid waste, and various other materials. Subsection 4 of the same code section notes the conditions for use interpretation. I think this use is just so far different than what is allowed under business park. It should be denied, or in this case, for this purpose, sent back to planning and zoning. The proposed use is generally prohibited under business park. And we also note that there is a hearing, another hearing scheduled tomorrow in front of planning and zoning for the actual change to general industrial from planning and zone, or from business park use itself. We understand that city staff in the notes leading up to that meeting tomorrow does not recommend approval of the requested rezoning. The city staff doesn't recommend requested rezoning, then why approve the conditional use? Any questions?
What's the zone now?
Business park.
Okay.
Is this ground on tomorrow, is it part of the ground that's being asked to be rezoned? Or is it, I thought it was a parcel next to it?
Susan Stewart, Chair of the Board of Adjustment. I just want to clarify, I believe that the item before you is an action of the Board of Adjustment, not the
Right.
Planning and Zoning Commission. I'll have Jeff or Chris address what's on our agenda tomorrow.
Chris Madsen, Senior Planner. Correct. This is one of the multiple properties that's being requested to be rezoned in the Northbrook Business Park from Business Park to General Industrial. There's about 4 different tracks that are being rezoned, and this would be one of those that's being requested.
Why would you ask for that? Why would a petitioner ask for that to be rezoned if they've got what they want through the Board of Adjustment? I'm wondering. What do they gain by that?
There's a number of different properties that are being requested. In the general industrial zone, you do not have to meet the design standards, the building design standards that you do under business park.
Yeah.
And the setbacks are different, as well as the land use. More uses would be, heavier industrial uses would be allowed under GI than BP.
Right, but if you've been through Board of Adjustment,
The board put a 2-year term on that conditional use permit, that it'd only be good for a 2-year period. So after 2 years, the petitioner would have to come back forward and ask for a renewal. Under GI, it would be an allowed use and would not need to have a renewal after 2 years.
So I don't know if this is appropriate. I sent you an email.
Correct.
Is it appropriate to ask you a question, or?
I am more than glad to tell you either about my individual vote or in general what was said at the Board of Adjustment meeting. I cannot, of course, speak for everything.
No, I'm just curious about your vote. You're the one commissioner that voted no.
I voted no, and my thought at that time was that we were asking the petitioner to make a very large commitment of money, and that, or I shouldn't say we were asking him to, he was going to be making a big commitment of money, a different kind of commitment than many other conditional uses like borrow pits, where you rent a truck and you haul some dirt, and that it really wasn't right to impose a 2-year term on it. The remainder of the Board of Adjustment did vote in favor of the use for the 2-year term. They supported the use, but they wanted to have them come back in 2 years and see what had happened. And I will just tell you one thing that struck me about the presentation was that the property owner spoke, not the tenant who's going to be running the towing company. And there were questions that the property owner couldn't answer, like hours of operation and things like that, that I think would have been helpful to the decision to make it either go up permanently or down, as opposed to being a 2-year term.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And it's not planned on being a salvage yard, is that correct?
Well, and that was, I didn't know if it's my place to clarify or whose place to clarify, but the owner was asked whether it was going to be a salvage yard or whether wrecked vehicles would be towed to it, and that is, he did say that was not the case, that you might have a vehicle towed to it, it would be taken to a salvage yard. But I guess my understanding is that it would be like a parked car that gets towed. That's the kind of vehicle that would be towed here. And there would be a building there where you would go and pay for your car, and the car would be temporarily stored in the lot with an opaque fence.
Is this a towing service?
I think you would have to, I believe the property owner is in the audience. It may be good for you to ask him, because there were some questions of that sort that really we didn't get very good answers to at the Board of Adjustment meeting.
Jeff Hansen, Community Development Operations Manager. To clarify on the salvage, the conditional use permit that was approved for the 2-year period would not allow for any salvage operations to occur on the property. So whether they completed that function as a tenant, they would not be allowed to do it at this location.
The salvage yard, even in industrial, requires a conditional use, right?
Salvage in the BP is a prohibited use, so it could not account unless it's rezoned.
Right, but if it's rezoned, then a salvage yard could be allowed in 2 years. Or it could be allowed next week if we approve it.
If the rezoning's approved, it could be allowed after that point.
I'm a little confused here. So if you rezone it for 2 years and then they come back and they want to keep it the way it is, then that's fine. But if they don't want to keep it.
But if they're denied, they have to leave?
Yeah, how's that work? Because they're 2 years and then if they have a business, they have to go because it's not working, or?
Just want to clarify, the action that's in front of you is the acknowledgement of the Board of Adjustment for a conditional use permit. I know there's been some discussion on rezoning, but that hearing has not occurred. That hearing is occurring tomorrow at the Planning and Zoning Commission at 4 o'clock. So the item in front of you is a conditional use permit, not a rezoning.
And actions of the Board of Adjustment are generally final actions, which would be appealable to district court. The council does not have oversight of the Board of Adjustment like planning and zoning. However, in conditional use permits,
Just one second. Let's be clear on this. The council can actually sue their own Board of Adjustment.
Correct. And the council also has.
Not saying we're proposing that, but I want to make sure the council understands that.
Correct. It's a standalone, separate entity from the council, and that in years past that has happened where the council or the city has filed an action in district court against the Board of Adjustment. However, in conditional use permits, the council does have the authority to send it back for reconsideration by the Board of Adjustment.
Okay, so a conditional use permit is 2 years, for 2 years.
That's what the Board of Adjustment approved, was a 2-year conditional use permit with a 2-year.
Forever. Normally it's forever.
The request was for a permanent conditional use, and instead
that's where I'm confused. So why would you want a 2-year conditional permit if you're going to run a business?
I can only speak for what I think was in the Board of Adjustment's mind. We had a very lengthy discussion about this, and Nicole, tell me if I should say what I think the other commissioners were thinking. It's in your materials, but I think they were They questioned the use. They didn't want to entirely deny it. So, but based on the facts and the information that was presented to us, they felt it was something that was worth doing for a 2-year period, and then subject to further review that might make it permanent or might extend it for another 2 years.
So then tomorrow, could it go to planning and zoning and then go back to the Board of Adjustment?
No, I think there's some confusion here tonight. The Planning and Zoning Commission and the Board of Adjustment are two separate entities.
Correct.
What we are discussing today is the Board of Adjustment's action on December 12th. Tomorrow, there are other items on the Planning and Zoning, and I hate to say this, and I know this is the way it always works, but they are recommendations to you guys. You don't have to approve anything we do at Planning and Zoning. That's what's happening tomorrow.
Let's clarify this. Tomorrow, if it gets rezoned, the council accepts that rezoning, then they can come back for even a different conditional use. They're not bound by this one anymore because you've changed the zoning.
That's what I'm asking about.
Okay,
If the rezoning would be approved, then they would not have to come back in 2 years.
for the 2 years, yeah.
Correct.
What's that?
If the zoning were to be approved, then they would not have to come back in 2 years if the conditional use permit is up.
Right, because they would be they would have already been accepted into that zone.
Correct.
Yes,
So the two
that's
issues,
right.
although you're right, but they are tied together somewhat.
Sure, of course they are.
So then the permit is over?
If the rezoning occurs.
Okay. So
Alex,
if
to point out, as far as
occurs-
a process and scheduling, if the council asked for this item to be remanded back to the Board of Adjustment, it cannot be heard tomorrow. It requires a proper notification period. And so therefore, it wouldn't be heard until January 23rd, which is be the the fourth Tuesday of January, which would be our next meeting.
So it would have to be deferred then, until then? Or-
It could not be reheard until January 23rd at the earliest.
Susan, I'm curious, in the RCA, you asked the question, it appears that whether or not there was another tow company in town that was similar to this operation. And I think Chris responded no, that Myers was the only, but there actually is more than Meyer in town.
Not in that zone, though.
Oh, you're just talking specifically about this zone?
I just recalled going to a towing company once that was very different from this proposal. That was really the gist of my question.
Okay, I didn't know if there was something in the question that we needed to clarify for you or not.
No, I just remember going to a place where there were a bunch of cars on grass,
Okay.
and there was like a little
Okay.
food truck where you paid for your car.
Sure,
And that was very different than what was proposed. So I was just trying to get a better idea about what tow companies there are in the town.
I'm curious how many notifications were sent out, do we know? Because I don't think that was in the RCA. And then how many actually opposed? I saw 3 in the RCA, but that were in opposition.
No, we can pull that up.
It does say one phone.
Lauren Mason, 3319 Northbrook. As we have canvassed the neighborhood for, of course, you have places where people are leasing as well as people that are owners. But speaking of actual, I guess there are, I think it was 6 or 7 owners of properties on Northbrook that are strongly opposed to this. Where there are tonight, I don't know, we better be here tomorrow night. And there was at least 1 or 2 people who lease who were opposed to this. The issue is just we really like the business park zoning. To our recollection, there are only 3 individuals who received the letter. And it's my understanding it's only people within 200 feet of that property. So it just changes the complexion of North Park Drive significantly if you're gonna have towed vehicles.
Up and
then
down.
our other concern is, so you're putting towed vehicles that may or may not have been in an accident, so you're parking it on a gravel surface, not a concrete surface, and the ground contamination issues. And so it was my understanding that if you guys do not ask the 12th in order to file an appeal, which I believe would then run out January 11th. That's why we appreciate the fact that you reheard this. I apologize for the lack of representation for Northbrook Drive today, but there are numerous people who are strongly opposed to having a tow yard. So we appreciate but to our knowledge, there were only 3 letters that were sent out. It was to Bob Clemenson, myself, and to Bowman. And Jeremy's Boatman's response basically was, I would not have invested $1 million here had I known I was gonna have a tow yard across the street, so.
Thank you.
Okay. I believe I see the tow company back. Are you the tow company?
I'm the property owner.
Okay. I'll sit down.
There was a question about the notification area. The required notification area had 6 property owners. Of those 6 property owners, the petitioner owns 3 of those properties that are in the notification area.
So that's why it only went.
How would
through.
the MBS not be in that?
It's a ways away.
Huh?
Oh, it seems like it's a ways away.
MBS?
MBS?
MBS is right across the street from Boatman.
MBS is lot 9, yeah, right.
They're right across the street from Boatman.
Chad said he did not receive a notice.
Attached on the screen here is the notification map that was sent. The parcels that are highlighted in red are the ones that did receive a notice. So there's a total of 6 different deed
Oh,
holders.
because he's way up in the corner, okay.
Yeah, a total of 6 different actual deed holders received notification.
I got you.
Or
So
were
it's
mailed
200
notification.
200 feet, the radius?
200 feet plus right-of-way, so I believe Northbrook is 80 feet in this location, so it'd be a 280-foot notification.
Thank you.
And just a clarification on the 30 days, that 30 days would start after council has acknowledged the Board of Adjustment's action. So if council were to acknowledge those actions tonight, that 30 days would then start tonight.
Oh.
If you were to remand it, it still wouldn't start until 30 days after you have acknowledged those actions. So it would go back to the board and then come back to council again. So those 30 days haven't started yet.
Okay.
So if we approve this, the 30 days starts and then they could appeal that?
Correct.
Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
They have to appeal within 30 days.
Go ahead, Brad.
Brad Cummings, Orchard, Nebraska. I'm the property owner. The towing company will be my tenant, and that's how, I plan on continuing to own and lease to the towing company. It's not a salvage yard. There won't be any salvage on grounds. Towing companies are allowed, as I understand it, in a business park. The only exception that's being asked for the conditional use permit is the outdoor storage of vehicles for more than 48 hours, which requires a privacy fence, essentially. I've agreed to meet all of the design standards for the building. And I have a bunch of pictures of almost all the buildings on.
Except for that
Northbrook.
changes tomorrow if your zoning changes.
Actually, on the floor tomorrow, I'm going to withdraw the 3 lots that we're talking about. The zoning is going to be for the 2 larger properties, the rezoning. So
Okay.
that won't be an issue with these properties. I don't know if you're interested in seeing these photos, but it shows that there's 2 sets of them. That there's only 1 building on Northbrook that meets the current design standards. As far as the outdoor storage goes, it exists. These pictures were taken on Saturday.
So you're talking about building a fence?
Any of the cars that are in conditional use, any of the cars that are stored outside or any storage has to be done behind a privacy fence. So yes, the property will be fenced. I think the 2 years on the temporary conditional use permit pretty much puts the teeth in that it'll be maintained properly or the conditional use won't be renewed.
Yeah.
What kind of fence is required?
By code, an opaque fence, whether that's privacy or a brick wall or what have you, but it has to be opaque. It can't be seen from right-of-way or surrounding property.
Or it can't be a chain link fence with slats through it, either, right?
I was gonna say, I thought I saw a wood fence or something.
Yeah, cedar fence.
Cedar fence, that's what I saw.
Okay, so what am
That's up to the owner, yeah. Okay.
We're kind of being used as an exhibit for this hearing, that's why I wanted.
You can look at them
Okay.
once they came here, they become a public document. Practicing law again, I apologize for that.
Mayor.
Your excuse, Your Honor.
I'm okay, I saw what you were saying.
This
So
is the
the
one
towing
chamber
com-
where you can't sue a guy for practicing law without a license, right?
Brad, the towing company will be In relationship to the businesses already there, you'll be at the end of the roadway?
That's correct, yeah. And there's not a cul-de-sac or a turnaround there. I mean, it's not an issue, or it may be an issue, but it's not anything that, that I've necessarily caused. I've owned a building, besides the vacant ground, I've owned a building on Northbrook, for 10 years. That's as close to this property as you can get. It's 3300 Northbrook. And so,
Susan, was your point then that you're fine with rezoning or the use of this? Your point was just the dollar amount that was being invested, and it wasn't just with the 2 years?
It just didn't strike me as the kind of situation where it's appropriate to put a time limit on a conditional use permit. We have a lot of conditional use permits with time limits for borrow pits, where people rent a truck, they haul dirt out, and then in 2 years, we review that. In that case, there's no permanent capital investment. That was really what drove my decision. But of course, you have to notice all the other commissioners did vote in favor of the 2-year permit, so there was no one who was opposed to it.
so if I can interrupt you, so as I understand it, at the end of 2 years, the towing company, if it isn't renewed, the conditional use permit, the towing company can stay there. They just may not be able to store cars outside.
Is that true, right?
The conditional use permit was for the outdoor storage.
Huh?
The conditional use permit was actually for the outdoor storage portion of the
Over
company.
48 hours or something, right?
Any outdoor storage of material or equipment on the site would require the conditional use permit.
It was the building.
Otherwise, the business could be allowed if it was all taking place inside the building.
Okay.
So-
Jeff, do you think these other businesses have a point with their complaints or their worries? I mean, as far as this industry going in down there, do any of you, or?
I think I'd rather have them comment on what their concerns would be.
So how tall is the fence going to be?
The required fence is 6 foot, I believe. It'll meet the design standards, or I won't get an occupancy permit. It'll be gated and, yeah.
Okay, so is this a towing company? Is this what we're talking about then?
It is a towing company, that's correct.
Okay, so you're gonna be towing, what's the name of your company? Or
Now, I'm the property owner. I'm gonna be leasing to a towing company.
Okay, can you
So
tell
the
me that is?
tenant, the tenant is going to be, as far as the way it's maintained and ran, is going to be under my lease.
So you're gonna be the big boss there, telling them what they're doing right or wrong, right?
And again, the accountability here is if the fence isn't maintained,
Right.
it doesn't meet the code.
Here's
And
my
then-
problem, Brad, is
Okay.
not that it's your problem, but I owned one of those buildings.
Right?
I'm not sure, when I owned that building, that I would want a towing company, knowing that traffic comes and goes at all hours of the night to get a car out, that's the type of business that I would want in that particular neighborhood. That's why they historically are in industrial neighborhoods where hours of operation are not a problem. It just is a little bit out of character. I know you're gonna tell me there's outside storage and all that exists. Well, guess what? They were grandfathered in because of your new zoning ordinance. And so I don't necessarily agree with the staff's 60%, but the rest of them do here, so that's beside the point of what a building should look like. I just think it's out of character for the neighborhood. But my biggest problem is this: when you do a conditional use, you either do it and say that's what it is, or you don't do it. I've never heard of a 2-year conditional use. It makes, you have the same concern, Susan. Is it the right thing in this neighborhood? And if you have a concern, then obviously it's not the right thing in this neighborhood, as far as I'm concerned. Or you don't put a time frame on them. I've never seen this in my 18 plus years of doing this. I've never seen a conditional use permit that had a time frame. Maybe you guys can tell me of another one.
Just one. It was on Ruston Street, right south of the self-storage units, south of Outer Drive. The crushing operation. There was a 2-year term placed on that one. And after 2 years, he did receive a new conditional use permit that is not timed.
Okay, well, I stand corrected. They're rare.
My knowledge, that's the only one.
But
other
that's
than a
also
borrow.
what's the zoning there?
General industrial.
You put them on borrow pits, I think, probably. but-
We do put them on borrow pits.
Right, because you're more
regularly.
concerned about a time frame of getting it done
Those
than
are
you are about
temporary
the
in nature.
borrowing. But
And yeah.
That's why I asked in the first place, because if you're gonna put a 2-year limit on the conditional use, it doesn't make sense to me, because this is a business that you're gonna have, if you don't like what they're doing within 2 years, then they gotta go. So I don't I guess I'm missing something here. Kind of like you're on probation for 2 years until.
Right.
Then, then what happens after 2 years? Then do they go another 2 years and they're still on probation, or?
Well, you better maintain the fence properly.
Yeah,
and
I mean.
do what the
but
conditions of the
You'd have to
conditional
do that
permit.
anyway. I
Yeah.
mean,
Oh, absolutely.
So, you know what, but I guess I'm confused.
I think that what Mayor Scott said, I don't disagree with you completely, other than I think we have a misconception of what Northbrook Industrial Park is. It's zoned as a business park, but in a business park, you could have a used car dealership there. It doesn't require any exceptions. So I just think
used cars are supposed to be cars that can actually move, cars that can actually be driven, as opposed to a car that's been towed because it's not movable.
my point was the traffic would be the same. I mean, it would be similar.
No, you do.
Well, not at different nights.
No, I get my car towed in, I have a real incentive to get there by midnight. Because it's one more day to marriage if I don't.
Okay.
So you have a real incentive to get to Myers or Stockton's or whoever quickly. Because if that car is drivable, then I have a real reason to want to get there before I have to pay another $25, $35 a day.
Sure.
So your property is going through to how far down is your property around everybody else's?
It's adjacent to these two property owners that are here.
Those right across.
It's across the street from them, yeah. So.
Well, I had the privilege when I think Mr. Moore was on the P&Z years ago to remand one of these back to the Board of Adjustment. And I know what the results are going to be, because the Board of Adjustment, quite frankly, does not like the council remanding these back, which I think is really unfortunate. I don't think there's anything wrong with asking the Board of Adjustment to look at something again, but historically, you take offense to that, which bothers me a little bit. That's why I don't like the Board of Adjustment.
You'd have to ask Mr. Moore. I've only been on it for
Well,
7 years.
I reminded him that today.
Times
are changing.
As a planning and zoning commission, we're not used to remands, but we're used to our recommendations being denied quite frequently.
And that's why with the Board of Adjustment, you've always felt like you're the final say in the council ought to accept, and I understand that. But I do think there are certain cases where the council should at least ask the Board of Adjustment to review it. And I think this is, personally, I'm going to make a motion that we do, and if the rest of you decide that their decision's a correct decision, that's the way it is. It'll go, and Mr. Steve can go over that building across the street and file a court case, and that's, the system works that way. Because I suspect that this council, no matter how it goes, is not going to be willing to sue their own Board of Adjustment. It doesn't happen very often, so.
Well, when it goes back to Board Adjustment, so there's not been any changes. I mean, they're not hearing anything to dispute what you're saying. They're not hearing anything they didn't hear already. I don't know what new there would be.
I would point out that we did not hear from the tenant. There, we had questions, at least I did, about the hours of operation. Questions have come up here about the numbers of vehicles. That kind of information more about.
See what their operations are. I can certainly do that, but we don't have a lease yet because we don't have the use permit yet. So it's.
No, but I would tell you this, I think it's in your best interest to at least have your proposed tenant come to speak to the Board of Adjustment.
And I guess one other thing, I would ask Jeff or Chris, I thought that during the discussion, someone asked whether we could impose hours of operation pursuant to a conditional use permit. Is that something we could add to a permit or not? I can't remember what the answer was.
The Board of Adjustment can impose hours of operation, but staff would recommend against that only because it's very difficult to enforce.
Sure.
It's not, the business itself, though, is not the conditional use permit. It's the outside
Yeah,
storage.
it's the.
Nature of
it's
the
car
business
wash,
really
yeah.
doesn't
Oh,
allow
yeah,
it to
but
be an
as a part
8-hour.
of that conditional use, he's exactly right. They can put hours on the operation. Absolutely, that Board of Adjustment has that
But
right.
if the towing company stores cars at another property and it's just a towing company, then it has to apply to everyone, the hours. Or how could that work?
Once you go for a conditional use, it opens. Again, I'm practicing law here. But that board has the right to put conditions on that.
And I'm
that
not
can-
really
One of those can be
saying,
hours.
I'm not saying we would or won't. I mean, that would be a whole board decision. I just think more, all I'm saying is more information would help our decision-making process a lot.
Well, the bottom line is, if it's a salvage, or not salvage company, a tow company, they're gonna be working all hours of the night, so it's kind of hard to put a time limit on it.
Right.
Or time.
24/7.
Yeah, it's gonna be
And the conditional
24/7
use permit
deal.
isn't needed if they don't store cars.
What's that?
The conditional use permit is not needed if they don't
Right.
store cars.
Exactly.
But you still can put conditions of when you can have customers, all I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I'm not proposing, I'm just telling them they can.
Right.
They can come and go in their business like anybody, any one of these businesses can. But as far as customers, you can put conditions on if they choose to. I'm gonna move that we, ask the Board of Adjustment to send this back and ask them to re-review their findings.
I'll second that.
Greckin,
Aye.
Moore,
Abstain.
Scott,
Aye.
Waters.
Aye.
Capron.
Aye.
I don't know when it'll go back. Now, will the people within 200 feet be notified?
Correct. It'll be going back on the January 23rd meeting. We will send another notice after tonight's meeting, letting the neighbors know what occurred, and then we will send another meeting for the Board of Adjustment hearing. So 2 additional notices will go out between now and the next board meeting.
And that will include all of the businesses on Northbrook?
No.
It would be the same
You're just gonna go the
notification.
280? Well, if there's only half a dozen, they should all have the right, don't you think, to be able to?
Well, these guys, if they're,
Okay,
the 2 property owners have been in contact, they kind of be fall upon them to do that, so.
okay.
We had additional property owners attend the other hearing that were outside the notification area, so I believe they're aware.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Nicole, I had a conflict of interest.
Yes, I've noted you
Okay.
as abstaining.
But I know you're supposed to state that, so.
Thank you.
5 are resolutions adopting the 2017 fourth quarter supplement to the municipal code covering ordinances through number 2017-1159. 6 are a resolution accepting a donation from Parks and Recreation Foundation for the Cone Park project. 7 is a resolution setting a public hearing on the proposed amendment number 2 to the amended combined central Sioux City CBD urban renewal plan for the combined general Sioux City CBD urban renewal area. 8 are civil penalties and suspensions. A is a resolution assessing a $500 penalty against the 20th Street Tap, 1923 Pierce Street for violation of the Iowa beer, wine, and liquor laws. B is a resolution assessing a $500 penalty against Floyd Food and Fuel, 3241 Floyd Boulevard for violation of the Iowa beer, wine, and liquor laws.
I need to abstain on that one, Mayor.
Okay.
Conflict of interest.
C is a resolution accepting a $500 penalty against oh, my Spanish, I need it now. La Michoacana, number 2, 1001 Court Street for violation of the Iowa beer, wine, and liquor laws. D is a resolution assessing a $500 fine against One-Eyed Jacks, 3091 Hamilton Boulevard for violation of the Iowa beer, wine, and liquor laws. 9 are actions relating to agreements and contracts. A is a resolution awarding a contract to utility service company for the Singing Hills Ground Storage Reservoir Exterior Painting Project.
Yeah, Rick, I want to talk to them.
Can somebody speak about that if they want to?
Let these guys go ahead and give the staff report.
Mayor and Council, Rick Mock, Special Assistant to the City Manager. We bid the project with several alternates. Alternate 1 being the name Sioux City on the top of the water tower. Alternate 2, Sioux City, home of Sioux City, Sioux lettering on the side of the tank. And alternate number 3 was to put some whimsical notes. So we can opt for any or all of the options. The staff did receive fantastic bids, ranging from $233,000 to $95,000, including the estimates. The base bid, which is approximately $68,000 for just the paint of the tank, does need to be done, and we are approaching the 30-day deadline, so that decision has to be made. The other alternates, I'm sure that we can do as a change order or ask the contractor to hold his costs on. If there's a long discussion, I understand that we still do not have the copyright laws covered on this. We have contacted the owners of the rights to the song, and one of them has gotten back and said he's willing to do what the second does. The second has, in my estimation, looked for a dollar amount from the city and not necessarily been amicable in negotiating with us.
For the music part of it.
Well, and I assume they also own the rights to the name, although Woodbury County does have the right to Sioux City Sioux's names under specific font, and that is soon to expire with Woodbury County. If we chose to go ahead with that, we could work with the county and acquire it. I believe it expires in February.
Well, we should not let somebody else pick that up.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, how's your legal expertise in copyright? That's a little fine deal.
I know which attorney the county used the first time on establishing the trademark.
I think we need to do that.
It's a Des Moines firm that handled it for them.
Yeah, and the way I understand it, I think it's like maybe $700 to acquire the rights to that from the county. I don't know where I got that figure, but
It costs about $700 to do a copyright.
Yeah.
That's what the attorney's charging.
Yeah.
Well, it costs about $700 to renew.
And the licensing fee for the trademark was around in the $700 range.
Right.
And so Rick, what we're saying as far as we don't know what the cost would be for the notes for Sioux City Sioux, and that the alternates right now are just putting home of Sioux City Sioux, Sioux City on the top, and musical notes.
Right.
Correct.
Correct.
And we're not going after the copyright for the notes.
Correct. So we're not paying anything additional for any specific song or anything like that. We're just, as far as painting additional artwork on the side.
That is correct, as we currently bid it.
Correct.
If council chose to want to put the formal notes and the song's title, then we could pursue that if we
And it
did
would be
get
a
the.
separate item for a separate amount of money or something.
Right.
Okay.
Come on up.
Okay,
Name and address if you would.
all right. Well, my name's David Keene, and I live at 1106 4th Street. And I just wanted to ask if there had been any consideration regarding painting of water towers. This is the first I really heard of this was from the article in the paper today. If they thought of giving companies that are in this area, that are large employers, an opportunity to put their logo on these water towers. They're always looking for money or for places to advertise, and if they're large employers in this area, maybe there would be some companies that would like to have their logo on the water tower and not have it cost Sioux City anything. Have it professionally done, So that's all the comment that I had to make. And
Thank you.
Thank you. The answer to that question is, I can almost answer it for you.
Legal.
You have to be terribly careful because the city attorney will say you may get somebody that would not be something you would find appropriate on a water tower, and therefore, if you open it to one, you've opened it to everybody, and so she would always urge you to be very cautious in your approach of how you do that. Did I answer it pretty much?
Yes, correctly.
well, what I'm saying is putting it out there as an opportunity for companies to invest, so to speak, in having advertising on the water tower, have their logo put up there with their approval, and everything done in a way that would be where the logo is going to be painted by, let's say, the way they want it, or
The problem
just
is,
an idea.
Yep, no, I'm not disagreeing with you.
David, I tend to agree that it's a good idea.
And I'm not talking about just one. I'm talking about like maybe 8 or 10, and really have it look splashy.
I'm more
kinda cool.
interested, however, in marketing and branding the city and helping the city be identified as opposed to helping a private business. So if it'll help market the city and brand our community.
Yes,
and Sioux
exactly.
City
That's
Sioux
what I'm talking about.
Is a really good idea.
That's exactly right. I mean, having it be something that Sioux City can be proud of, to have those those employers display their logos on the water towers. I don't know, I just think it'd be kind of cool. But anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor and council, a reminder that this is a concrete water tank, and so it is not susceptible to a lot of artwork on it because of the texture of the tank.
Rick, can you talk a little bit about, and remind me, you probably have said it before, so I apologize, the process that went into it to determine this is the art we wanted to go with, or was there a certain process that said, no, we want to brand the Sioux City Sioux, or at least have that on the side? Was there a process with that?
Well, there's, as council recalls, you directed us to start looking at something when we brought forward painting the Indian Hills tank, and we brought back some renditions at that time. And ultimately, the direction, at least that we felt from staff, was that we would do this because it's the most visible from not only the interstate, but from the bypass and the mall. And so a committee was formed with citizens representing the community, Councilperson Capron, and city staff, and we discussed over several meetings. We sent council many different renditions, but ultimately we landed on something that branded Sioux City and that recognized Sioux City, and it's our heritage.
Harry Kearns' idea of the merry-go-round got vetoed early in the process.
Pretty pricey.
When was this process again, remind me? A while back, right?
You were part of it.
Before that part. Looking at that, that's right.
Okay, it's in the consent agenda, so it'll stay. B is a resolution approving a contract to HydroClean for the Southgate Drive manhole rehabilitation project. C is a resolution approving a contract to Mosaics Furniture and Floors for the City Hall carpet remodel project. D is a resolution accepting the Housing Trust Fund pledge agreement with New Style Development. E is a resolution accepting the Housing Trust Fund pledge agreement with Arch Icon Development.
I have to abstain on D and E because those are ongoing projects.
F is a resolution approving amendment number 2 to the consulting services agreement with Olson and Associates for the 46th Street paving and draining improvements project. G is a resolution approving the amendment number 2 to the consulting services agreement with JEO Consulting for military road reconstruction and bridge rehabilitation project. Pete, do you want to talk about that one?
Yes. G?
Yes.
Dave, I had some conversations with you some time ago, and we talked about what the cost of this would be, and I thought that was the end of the discussion. But I'm just trying to figure out. I know that this is for design rework necessary, the 11.3.
Mm-hmm.
But there will also be an additional cost of maybe 31.5.
That's what the actual construction cost of the additional wiring and because the lights that are proposed out there are 240 volt lights. The proposed outlets would have to be 120 volt outlets.
So we're talking about an overall need in order to accomplish this, about $43,000.
Correct.
And I also remember conversation about, well, my first question is, how does that impact your streetscape budget? Is there money available to do this?
There was an initial $100,000 that was allocated for streetscape.
Yeah, $50,000 for the next 2 fiscal years, or the current fiscal year and next fiscal year.
And I think this would be outside of that.
This would be outside of it. The other discussion that I remember was an insurance requirement.
That was.
Will we own, the city will own them under this?
The insurance requirement is when Mid-American owns them.
Okay.
If Mid-American owns them and there's outlets on them, for them to put that cost, but I know that's why the ones in Leeds are no longer used.
Why are we not owning these poles?
We will own these poles, so there won't be an insurance requirement.
It's the
these we will.
Leeds,
Leeds,
we don't
that's why
own
the
them.
outlets.
We don't own them, that's why they had to cover the insurance, and they said they're no longer doing it. We own these, therefore we don't have to have the insurance.
Yeah, and we don't make the ones downtown have insurance, and the ones in Morningside have insurance, so we wouldn't that wouldn't be a requirement on these because they'll be city-owned.
And Leeds is not city-owned?
No, they're Mid-American owned poles.
And talk to me a little bit more about where we have done this, because I know we talked about areas that there were. Did it come before council when we did the Morningside ones, or you were telling me?
Well, Morningside and downtown are a little bit different because of the decorative lights, so they're already 120-volt lights, so we're just feeding off of the power that's going to the lights.
And why are we going with 220 on lights all of a sudden?
That's just a different style of lights. For the Cobra heads are all 220.
They're
Or
what?
240, I mean. The Cobra head lights, the decorative lights are a smaller light.
So you're telling me that a Cobra head in my neighborhood is 240?
That's my understanding.
No.
I'm not an electrical guy.
I don't know the details on that either.
Okay. That's my understanding, is that the Cobra heads the lights are 240, and I'll let you speak to the lights that we get.
Is it cheaper to have 240?
Well, that's what we'd use, kind of set up basically the idea. I'm John Marburger. I live at 2504 South Cypress here in Sioux City, but I also work for JEO Consulting Group. Basically what we did is we set up the lights to mirror Mid-American standards. So it would be, we're basically putting a black pole in with a decorative base, but the idea being it'd be a standard pole that the city could just order and, for maintenance purposes.
So the
if
poles
ever one
along
gets
6th
hit.
Street running into Greenville that are purple poles, those are 220?
I don't know the answer there, but down on West 7th Street, that'd be basically the same exact pole we're putting down on West 7th Street and what runs all along Wesley.
Well, why didn't we put these on West 7th then with outlets?
We don't have outlets.
We don't have outlets on 7th, but other than that.
No, I'm saying, why didn't we?
Was never discussed I wasn't part of the public hearings when they did that project, but my understanding is it wasn't discussed.
Because nobody wants them out there. But.
Yeah, no, I think that's part of it, that in Riverside, they want to put them out, where 7th, I think it's, even getting people to take care of the plants. There was maybe some worries that people wouldn't take care of what's in the right of way, so. Since staff's probably not going to go out and put up decorations every year, kind of a thing.
Staff would what?
I don't think staff would go out and put up the decorations.
Oh, I bet they would.
Where's the
Jesus,
Riverside
it's
group who
Christmas.
That's city policy.
I'm teasing, Dave.
Yeah.
Whereas the Riverside
the
group
staff
has
doesn't put that
expressed that
stuff
they
up, no matter where it's at. That's what I don't get.
Right.
I don't understand how the staff decided that, because I think that Riverside people asked for this.
It was never conveyed to myself or Brittany that we were.
Well, and they asked for.
Not till recently when it suddenly became an issue. That's when it was brought up. It was never.
It wasn't part of the public open hearings that we had.
The first I heard about it was at a neighborhood network meeting, a month ago, I think, or in November, actually.
That's probably 2 months ago now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's when it came up. So, that's why we're coming back now, and it's completely up to you guys. I guess the only thing I would say is we need to probably set a policy on where we're going to put them and where we're not going to put them and when we're going to put them up.
That definitely helped for scopes when we set up a project.
We need to figure out where $43,000 is coming from, too.
And who would buy the decorations?
They already have them.
I think they have them.
They have them already. They actually, I won't say what they do with them right
They
now.
bought them under the condition they think that they'll get the votes to do
No,
this.
actually, Alex,
They've
I
had them
think,
for a long time. They put them up themselves.
Yeah.
They put them up themselves.
I didn't know, Mayor. I was just
But
asking.
here's my problem, is we go to Morningside and we see the decorations. We come downtown and we see the decorations. We've been in Riverside and they've had them. And I just have a hard time understanding how we didn't think that that is an important part of our community. That bothers me. And I've said, and I know you don't agree with it because it's obvious in the way we do business here, we should not treat one area of town any differently than any other area. That's my problem. If it's good enough for Morningside merchants to have this, and it's good enough for Leeds, whether they choose to have the insurance or not,
Ask
I
Kelly.
think it's your crew.
No, Parks and Rec would do that.
Okay, well, we helped them even put it up.
yeah, my primary concern was that if, who was going to own the poles and what the insurance,
Well, if we
and
go
whether
right,
or not the
here's the
Riverside
thing.
PAC was able to.
To go back to the beginning, initially, we weren't going to do any new poles out here. The new poles came from the last time when we met about the construction schedule and the 3-lane and all those things. One of them things I mentioned is about putting up new poles. That's when we added new poles to the project. Initially, we weren't putting up we were going to use the existing Mid-American pole line because it can't go
Where do we get the
away.
money for that? Where'd we get the money? Because we found the money for that,
Yeah,
didn't we?
and that's what we're saying. It's completely up to you guys to add the money
That's,
to it.
that's my whole point. We can find money for something you want to do.
Well, no, that was a direction from you guys that you wanted streetlights.
Well, I guess originally we did have new poles, but they would have been the standard galvanized that Mid-American would own.
Well, but right now,
versus-
they light the street off of their existing pole
Correct,
line.
right.
And that's how and Mid-American was gonna put up new lights on the existing poles. But, because they're gonna do some pole.
Where were they putting the decorations that they already have?
They put them
On the power poles.
Yeah. And they don't,
And they didn't have insurance?
yeah, so you might not.
Kind of hear no evil, see no evil, I think.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So
But
then we
there's no-
decided we're
there's
gonna
no-
change
they're
the
not
poles.
connected. They're
How much
not-
did it cost to change the poles? You had to re-engineer.
100
Well, I think we have about 178,000 in lighting in the project.
And engineering costs.
Right,
You didn't do it for free, did you?
correct.
I didn't think so.
No.
You don't want to do this one for free just because you got a lot of work with the city lately, I'm sure.
Well, I'd prefer to
You'd
be
prefer to
compensated
charge,
for
yeah.
work that we do.
You and engineering firms and lawyers are really good about fees and not going the other way, but that's okay. That's how you make a living, so. I don't care, Pete, make a motion. It doesn't matter to me, but.
No, I'm fine with it if we have money for it, but I don't see the money end of it.
Where did we come up with 178 proposals? I'll go back. If we don't have the money for this, then go back to the old polls. Because you found 178,000 plus his engineering fees, didn't you?
It's scope creep that we have on lots of projects. That's
You what?
It's scope creep that we get on a lot of our projects, that we start out with one thing and we just, and it's it's another reason you look at our CIP, why projects get bumped back, because we keep adding scope to them.
Stuff to it.
We never bring a project, which we do, under budget, but we don't talk about those that we could use the money from that. Stan, you got any under budget that we can steal from you, or?
In the CIP project, project sheet, you always have an unspecified amount there.
And that's gone away.
That's gone away for this year? I was thinking.
Well, you better put more money in this project to begin with, because once you put it off a year, it's not gonna be cheaper.
Well,
it's gonna change.
And the other thing is, that the other question I had here, Dave, is why is it taking so long to reach an agreement with South Dakota and North Sioux?
They're waiting on our permit, so they know what their costs are gonna be. Because North Sioux is getting paid from the state of South Dakota.
Yes.
The South Dakota just wants them to give them a dollar amount. They don't want to commit to a dollar amount until they know when it's going to get constructed, so they think they have an accurate, because they're not going to be allowed to go back for a second bite of the apple.
So is this something that'll end up happening in next year's budget?
Yeah, I think the way we're hearing it now, the Corps is not going to give us a permit till at least April. So that would.
We're waiting on the Corps, and
Yeah.
then they're
Everything
waiting
is set to go
They're
except-
waiting on us to get it back from the Corps.
Yeah, when they know it's gonna get constructed is when they wanna nail down what the price is gonna be, like I said, because they get their number. South Dakota's just gonna pay them a flat amount of money, and if it's too much, they get to keep the extra. If it's too little, they gotta come up with the difference.
Now, when we voted for these new poles, why didn't we just use the same poles that were in Morningside or downtown? Why didn't we just plan on that, I guess?
Because we weren't gonna put decorative lighting out there. I mean, with the Cobra heads.
It just gets back to the whole standard, though, is we're just gonna use these, rather than, well, we're gonna use these here, and then these other ones here, and then we have these other
Well,
ones here.
if I had my way, I'd get rid of all the decorative lighting. They're really a pain.
All right, Scrooge, we'll listen here.
Honestly, the Sternberg lights are a maintenance issue for us. So, I mean, we would not want to see.
Why, does a colored pole cost more than a galvanized?
Yeah, a little bit, and then you have the
Why go
decorative
with the
base.
For the color, because everyone, I guess we had the impression that we were gonna go, that's the direction we wanted to go, is make them look nicer. They look nicer than the galvanized poles.
You think so?
I think so.
That's in the eyes of the beholder.
I-
I can tell you that. I mean, I really don't think it's that, either one of them are overly attractive to tell
No,
you
they're
the truth.
streetlights.
And where is this going? Remind me of what section?
This is Military Road from Riverside Boulevard to the bridge.
So how far of a stretch?
Who pays for the electricity in
3 weeks,
downtown?
or 3 blocks, probably.
We do. They're our own.
City pays for it?
don't know how many lights.
Yeah, we don't separately meter the
Program or anything?
outlets. The bigger problem we have with the outlets downtown is people plug things into them that they shouldn't plug into them
Odd program.
without our knowledge.
That's what I'm saying. Maybe we just could do away with all Christmas decorations everywhere.
Uh-oh.
Oh,
And
God.
the Grinch that stole Christmas.
I mean, if it's
Yeah,
a
yeah,
problem,
that's the way
it
to
ought
treat
be-
everybody the
If it's a
same.
problem, it ought to be a problem everywhere.
How many light poles are we talking about?
Well, I wasn't saying the Christmas decoration is a problem. I said the Sternberg lights, the decorative globe lights.
Well, they might hang it for a lot of things. I will tell you that the Riverside Pack, as Bob knows, is very active and probably one of the stronger neighborhood coalitions around.
I
And-
have to apologize. I have to go.
Oh, okay.
It's senior parent night for my son's basketball. I gotta go.
Any chance that this can be paid for through the unspecified amount for the FY19? I
Whatever you
mean,
guys want to do, it's fine with us.
So we can move on, I'm gonna move, we defer this for 1 week and we get a funding source.
I just have one question while I'm over here. Jill.
Yeah.
Is there
Second.
any way, just a random question, sorry to pull you up. With the facade money or like facade program, has that ever been done out in Riverside? And would any of that money be able to do that?
That would actually be Jeff.
Oh, yeah, Jeff,
Sorry.
sorry. I'm sorry, Jill.
Jeff Hansen, Community Development Operations Manager. We have, after the project is over and after streetscaping is done, we're proposing in the CIP to have a facade
Yeah.
program. It's in there currently.
absolutely.
Because then what I'm wondering, is there anything that can be done with those funds for this type of project? I mean, having the decorative lighting would be facade style, wouldn't it? I mean, it's not the building.
My concern with approaching it with the facade program and the facade money is the infrastructure project would be done by that time.
Yeah.
And the expenses would go up significantly because of the road work would already be done.
Move we defer for 2 weeks.
Bob? No.
I'm fine with
He's
voting
okay
on it.
with it.
You find the money, Patty?
Yep.
It's gonna happen.
Yeah.
All right, I'll withdraw my motion, we'll move on. H is a resolution awarding a service provider agreement to Catalyst Solutions for the purchase of computer server software equipment installation for the wastewater treatment plant. Mr. Malloy, Mr. Sims, your emails, your explanations were absolutely the most, how do I say it politely? Misunderstood as I could tell you. Did you bid this just equipment to begin with, and then you went and found the person to put it in, or did you bid it as a total package? Because what you said in your response appeared that you bid the total package. What your sidekick said in his was you just bid equipment.
Mark Sims, Utilities Director. Initially, this was bid as just equipment. This is specialized equipment, and we were concerned about the ability to be able to handle it ourselves, so we asked WIC for assistance, and John and his team provided that. They went out and got 3 prices for the equipment, and they recommended the Dell product. Any of them probably would have worked, but the Dell was the one they recommended.
I got that from the email.
At that point, we felt that we needed to have somebody locally that could support this, and
we didn't take bids for that.
We did not, but their price is about $3,750 to do that. $3,750.
How could that be when the equipment was only 9,000 and the whole thing is 28 grand?
There is software, switches, there are other things that are part of that equipment that
you didn't include in your email to me.
As I said in the follow-up email, John Malloy, IT, there was an original equipment bid, and then the bid specs changed. So the 3 bids that we received were...
But you're right, both of them are probably correct.
Yes.
Okay. I watched you ref Friday night. Don't quit your day job. You don't have a future in that profession, so.
I thought you did a great job, John.
Thanks, Councilman.
He's refereeing a basketball game at the
It
Sioux.
was even Healing bringing in their own refs didn't work.
They needed about 6 of them, Dale.
Thank you. And
Thanks
I'm
for your
still
comments,
confused,
Mayor.
but at least now.
I appreciate that.
I haven't got to hassle you yet out of Morningside, have I?
Not yet. That's the opportunity.
Oh, he's not doing college games.
Oh, yes.
I see him on Morningside.
JV games, yeah. I'm not quite at that level.
I, as a resolution
Yep.
approving amendment number 1 to the Hungry Canyons Alliance Project Agreement on 41st Street Storm Sewer Project. I would hope after 2 years, we could finally get the neighbors to come to an agreement on this, folks. I don't understand what's taking so long, but 10 are actions authorizing the issuance of checks. A is a resolution authorizing final payment to H&R Construction for the Cone Park Day Lodge project. B is a resolution approving change order number 1, 2, and 3 and authorizing final payment to the Knife River Midwest for the reconstruction of the Taxiway A North Connector project at the Sioux Gateway Airport. C is a resolution approving change order number 1 and authorizing final payment to the T.R. Harris Construction for the Riverside Soccer Complex parking lot and biodetention pond project. D is a resolution approving a payment for a workers' compensation award. E is a resolution authorizing final payment to Strawn Construction Services for the bus shelter pad project. F is a resolution authorizing final payment to Municipal Pipe Tool Company for the annual utility lining project. G is a resolution authorizing final payment to Mark Albanesius for the 1300 block of 3rd Street emergency repair project. 11 are applications for beer and liquor license. See the list. Do you have any questions? 12, receipt of minutes. See the list. Do you have any questions? Anyone to be heard on any of those items, please come forward. We voting electronically today? Passes 4-0. 13 is a hearing and resolution determining the area of the city to be blighted and economic development area, designating it to be an urban renewal project, and adopting the amendment number 2 to the amended and restated urban renewal plan for the combined Floyd River urban renewal area. I'll move we defer till January 22nd, 2018.
Second.
Okay. Passes 4-0. 14 is a hearing resolution accepting the proposal of HCC Enterprises for the purchase of land in the combined Floyd River urban renewal area and authorizing development and minimum assessment agreements property of 500 block of South Lafayette Street. Motion requested to defer this item until January 22nd, 2018. I'll move that. Because I voted, but.
I hit it. It's flashing. Sorry.
Passes 4-0. 15 is a hearing and resolution approving the sale of land, sale of property, and authorizing a city deed to vacated east-west alley of 1228 Cornelia Street. The petitioners Brian and Carol Pettiplace. I'll move it.
Second.
Passes 4-0. 16 is a hearing and resolution accepting the proposal of the Sioux City Community School District for the purchase of land in the Teton Urban Renewal Area and authorizing the sale of property at 4198 Cheyenne Boulevard. I'll move it.
Second.
Passes 4-0. Any citizen concerns, please come forward and state your name and address for the record, please. Seeing none, we'll go to Mr. Gretkin.
I just had one thing that I wanted to mention to give the dog a little credit. The police department had an armed robbery reported
They did.
to them the end of, I'm not sure if it was Thursday or Friday. And they responded, and with the fine work of the police K-9, Dax is his name, D-A-X, they were able to track the suspect back to his home and make an arrest and clear the robbery. So they did a great job. His handler has trained him well, and I thought it was appropriate to give Dax a thank you for his work. And
You trained the handler well, or the handler trained the dog well?
well, I'm pretty sure the handler trained the dog, but in some cases it might be the other way.
Well, I know that you trained a lot of the young officers, so.
Oh, the officers, yeah, I thought you were talking about the
No,
dog.
I
didn't
wondered if
train
you
the
trained
dogs.
that officer.
No. But that's all I have. I think everything else I had was answered during the meeting.
I just want to remind everyone that Leif Erikson has skating now for free.
Yes.
And I hope that people out there take advantage of that. It's on the north side. And also Cone Park is doing very well. We're very excited about that. Kudos to the park people out there that are doing a great job at keeping it going. So we're very, very excited. So that's all I got.
I'll keep it short. I would just say I wanted to commend and congratulate the 185th on receiving their award. They received the Air Force's Outstanding Unit Award for exceptional meritorious service. Just wanted to congratulate them. Otherwise, I think that's all I got.
Yeah, they're a great corporate citizen,
Oh,
185th.
Yes, they are.
Is Leif Erikson the only place we plan on a skating rink? I'm curious as to,
I believe so. I believe that's the only place where we've identified for this year.
because that park down from the bottom of the hill from Briar Cliff would be a perfect park for one if it's possible to do another one.
I'll find out.
I'll for Rebecca.
Eddington?
Yes.
Yeah, on, what, 28th and Rebecca.
It would be perfect, and I wish there were a place in Riverside that were in the neighborhoods that, I don't know where it would be, because I just don't know where we put one.
Goldie Park, has that got
Goldie
anything
Park
back there?
would be
I'll
a
talk
sus-
to Matt and see if there's any other
Okay.
spaces that have been identified.
I would appreciate that.
You know what, I just want to remind everybody, when we have these ice parks out there, it all depends on the weather too. So if it gets warm out there,
No, that's right.
there won't be ice and, well, I
That's
know
why you
how
gotta
it goes.
go to Cone Park.
That's exactly right. Cone Park's set up for,
Well, seriously, something to consider is when you do Cook Park, it might be beneficial to spend the extra money and make it a dual-purpose splash pad.
Yeah, I agree.
That's a good idea. I
You still gotta have a chiller, which is not cheap, I understand, but it might not be the worst case to do that and light it well, and so.
Someone approached me, come to think of it, not talking about ice rinks, here recently about Cone Park and wondering if they could have an outside area with ice that they could do some curling activities and outside. And I don't know if there's any land down there to do that or not, if
Yeah, there's
they'd be
still
able
probably-
to have outdoor curling, but
That would be something that we could do, look at it for expansion.
for expansion,
Ice curling
yes.
and ice bowling.
and you know, yeah.
Oh,
Cone
really?
Park's on phases anyway. We're only on our first phase.
Sure,
So that would be, maybe be incorporated in our second phase.
yeah.
Keep putting all that stuff out in Morningside.
Oh,
Hey, we're,
oh, boy.
okay, sit
Now we'll
down.
catch
I just had all kinds of emails. I
Yeah,
missed
yeah, I
out.
know.
Oh,
Do you
you,
need a cooler?
What's that?
Cooler for that too, though? I thought it was all weather dependent. What do you need a chiller for?
No, I think the one at Cone Park has a chiller.
Oh,
Park
yeah.
has in-ground chiller.
No,
Yeah.
Cone Park
Year-round, you would need a chiller, yes, is what I'm saying.
for the splash pad and then the ice rink.
Yeah, there's a chiller that, for like $300,000, that MERD donated the money to make sure you can have ice, because you would not have had an ice rink until this week.
Yeah, and I thought you were saying with the Cook Park one that you would have the splash pad and then if it got cold enough, you would then have the ice rink.
No, I'm saying you
You're
should
saying
plan
have
to
it
see it.
year-round.
We may want to do combination ones if it's not too cost prohibitive, or build splash pads with curbs so that they're easy to flood.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So-
And
exactly.
fill and then when it is cold.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
That's something to be easy.
I move we adjourn unless you ladies have something.
Chillers are that
Okay.
expensive.
second.
Ford, Scott,
Aye.
Water,
Aye.
Capron,
Aye.
Aye.